What's up, everybody? It's Leo and Josh, man, with another episode of 713 Football, man. Today, we are going to have our first ever guest on here, man, Mr. Robert Land of Houston Sports Talk, man. How you doing today, Robert?
I'm doing great. Just looking forward to talking to you guys, trying to put my Rockets and Cougars on pause while I'm talking to you guys, and I'm going to go watch those games when we're done. So I'm all H-Town. You can see it behind me. It's an H-Town celebration here.
Yeah. What about you, Josh? You doing good, bro?
Yeah, man, I'm doing good, man. Just trying to stay warm up here in the freezing north. I know y'all got some cold weather, a little bit of it. Hopefully, y'all are warming back up. But yeah, just doing my thing, man. Just
That's
excited
good.
to see what's to come, Texans wise.
Yeah. All right, man. So let's just kind of get started right on this, man. First of all, if you aren't subbed, man, make sure you're subbed. Make sure y'all leave a like on this video because apparently, like the likes change the algorithm on YouTube. Now I've seen people kind of start talking about that. So let's leave a like if you watch this, now or later, man. And yeah, let's get right into this, man. So um I know me and Robert, we actually started talking a little bit at first on Twitter about the Texas offensive line last year. So let's go right into it, man. I mean, what are some areas for improvement that you think roster wise for next year, and like how do you think that we should go about, I guess, improving the offensive line? Because I'm sure you're gonna say that's one of the main needs. You think?
Well, tackle, I would leave Titus at right tackle. I know he played some left guard, but I just feel like with what his skill set is, and it's hard to find good tackles, harder a little bit than guards, go ahead and leave him there. I don't know what they're going to do with that Ingram. The money I'm hearing thrown around with him, everywhere from 10 to $15 million or something like that. I don't know if he's worth that. I think the Texans got about the most out of him that you could get. If they can afford it, you bring him back and at least have him there in case you draft somebody that you like better. I've heard they're talking about Mays, the center for Carolina, to improve a little bit there. I don't know what that would cost them, but if you could improve a little bit at center, why not? But the main considerations are definitely guard. They've got to draft at least. I would draft two guards. In fact, I wouldn't mess around this time. And we get into it, but I was disappointed with how they addressed the offensive line in the draft last year. Ursary was a great pick. He did a really good job for a rookie, and I'm really excited about his future. He's your left tackle. You've got one young stud there. You put him with Titus. It's just getting the rest of those positions squared away. But, I see some people on social media saying, oh, Stroud, if you could just get him a better offensive line and a better running back and what, come on. I mean, the offensive line, the running back, we can talk in circles, but you can't win playoff games when CJ Stroud plays like he did these two playoff games. You're not going to a Super Bowl when a guy is just turning the ball over like, he's handing out chiclets or something like that. It was just awful to watch, and he's got to be better.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that. And we'll get into that as the show goes on, I'm sure, man. Josh, what do you think, man, about heading into next season? I know we've talked a lot on our channel about, things and routes that the Texans can go, but like, content aside, what is like your main thing that you think the Texans need to address, moving forward into next season?
Yeah, I think they did a lot of the hard thing. They kind of opened up the wound that was the offensive line. They kind of cleaned it out. They created a better culture. They got Tunsil out of here. They were able to get Howard Titus to a point where he was a functional player, where he wasn't a situation where he was also kind of enough of a detriment in the run game that you couldn't really play him with Tunsil. You have that one guy now that you can kind of move around, left guard, right tackle. There's also right guard option. I know you've talked about previously they worked him at right guard last year in the training camp before Ed Ingram really kind of stepped up and took over that spot. I think offensive line is a thing where we got to continue to maintain where we were in terms of the overall approach, I would say, and kind of the across the line, right? We talked about the mentality is one thing. The coaching was a huge step up from last year. There was a cohesion, a vision for how they wanted to do it. But I think there needs to be there needs to be that level up. And you talked about CJ Stroud. The only way you can really treat CJ Stroud at this point is that he's at that lower to mid-level quarterback that you have to develop a really great run game around and a really kind of false multiplying unit together when you pair in Woody and then you add another running back and you kind of lean into that as your identity. And I think it'll make Nico better. It'll make the rookies better. If you're having a run game that kind of opens everything up, it'll make Dalton Schultz better across the board, and it'll make CJ better if you aim at that. And I think the sneaky thing, obviously running back is we all agree that you got to add running back, and you need that guy that can come in and give you 20 plus yards a pop at certain points in the game, similar to what we had with Mixon at points. Got to have that big play element, right? But I think it's also really, really important that you don't kind of sit and rest on your laurels on defense. This whole team is built around the defense. The defense has to be the driving force. If you're not working to improve the defense, you're going to get worse. Even if you have young players like we do across the board at different spots, especially in the secondary, and Will Anderson that continue to develop, there's a lot of spots across where it's Aziz and then a bunch of like question marks at linebacker. It's Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, and a bunch of guys that are like really good role players. But if Danielle or Will don't play the full 17 like they did last year, there's a huge step down of like who's going to be that next guy to come up. And we right now aren't built in a team that can be driven from the D-line the way that we played last year, and we were so lucky with injuries. There has to be another force player added in on the defensive line in this offseason. There has to be a safety brought in to compete. We can't go into the year with Kayvon Wallace as our starting safety. We got to continue to add players there that will make Jalen Petrie more of a flexible usage player, as a pressure player across the board. And we have to add another young linebacker because the Christian Harris experiment hasn't worked. And the Jamal Hill hasn't been able to got to level. Maybe he'll continue to develop and he'll be able to play eventually, but there has to be another young guy that's coming up behind that we can say, you know what, if Henry Toa is playing good, but we really need to have a guy that can come in and push him so that we have two guys back there that can then take advantage if we get to a point where we have another pressure player, DT, moving forward. I think DT is important, offensive line, safety, linebacker, tight end's important, and I think edge rusher is probably the most sneaky need for this team moving forward. Because there has to be that third guy. There has to be that next guy in the coming up that you can develop and play complementary now and then future difference maker after Hunter kind of starts scaling back as he gets older.
You're not going to find an edge rusher, though, high in, late first round typically, that you're going to want to draft at this point. You've got way more important issues. The offense is the issue. D'Amico has got the defense under control. And look, you could say, hey, they didn't have Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter behind Will Anderson and Danielle. Nobody has Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter to begin with. So, you had Danico Autry, that's one of the best subs in the league. They had great backups along the defensive line. They had a ton of injuries in the defensive tackle area. You don't even talk about because they have so much depth on defense and they were so awesome on defense. So, what do you address in this draft? What do you address in free agency? Offense, 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 because D'Amico is your coach. He is a defensive whiz. This team, it just keeps coming back every single year under D'Amico to the offense. So that to me, that is what you have to address in the offseason. And, you think you got all these guys in the draft. I just want to remind everybody that's listening that if you think they're going to draft everybody at those positions and that many guys, I'm telling you right now, Caserio is going to combine guys to move up, to move around. He might trade a pick and push it back to next year and keep the floodlines going for the draft. So, I wouldn't get caught up in where they're picking and how many guys that they're picking and how we got all these guys in the top 4 rounds. We're going to address this position, that position. Dream on. Have you seen Caserio in the draft? That's not the way it's going to work.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. I think we all do it, and I know for sure. Like me and Josh, I can't speak for Josh, but I think that's one of the things I like about Caserio, that he is very intentional with who he picks. I agree with both of y'all. I mean, I think that you know, while I agree with Josh like 100% that the defense is the driving force of the team, I think that with the quarterback that CJ Stroud is turning into, or I don't want to say turning into, that sounds crazy, but like, that he has shown himself to be for the last 2 years, I think that it's having a top defense is needed, because you don't want him going into games where there's pressure for him to throw the ball 50 some 40 times, right? Like, but and I think that having a good defense only allows you to rack up the rush attempts. The closer the game is, the more you can commit to the run, I believe. But at the same time, I 100% agree with you that you have to invest in the offense to I mean to win games. I mean, the way the interesting thing about this is, though, like, how do they find balance to do both things and hit on the draft picks? You know, um, it's a hard thing, and I'd argue too, before we move on, that we have invested heavily in the offense, in my opinion, the last couple of years. I mean, we gave CJ Stroud the best 11 personnel set that I could remember, his sophomore year, with the 3 number 1 receivers and Joe Mixon and Schultz. And then next year, although like Stephon Diggs leaves, I think that we got a very talented receiver that, got worked into the offense as the year went on in Higgins. We added another explosive player in Jalen Noel, who really, for whatever reason, didn't never get as many snaps as I thought he should have, and we still had Christian Kirk. I think we still had a really deep receiving core last year. I think that if we invest in the offense, it has to be from a whole different mindset. And I agree with you. Like, it starts up front and really with the running backs. At this point, I think that it's more like, to help CJ Stroud, it's more important to get him more stable protection. Although I do think that the protection was greatly improved, but more so when I'm talking about investing up front, I'm specifically talking about the run game, because I don't really trust him to really as a drop back passer at all, honestly, at this point. I haven't really ever been that high on CJ, but now I feel like it's less of a bias now and more that, like, we've all seen why I felt so really kind of not enamored with him when we drafted him. But let's go right into this. Give me a banners real quick. Sorry, y'all. So, question that I think me and Robert initially talked about was, did Caserio do enough for the offensive line in 2025? Robert, I'm gonna go ahead and give you the floor so we could, hear where you're coming from, and then we could give our opinions off of it.
Now, I got a lot of good stuff to say about Caserio, and I can follow it up afterwards. But let me just start off with, as much as I'm a Caserio supporter, my one major contention with last year's draft was Jalen Noel. It's not that I didn't like him, and it's not that I don't feel like he's got major upside, but not picking a guard in that spot still angers me, and it made no sense. Caserio had already traded for Christian Kirk, signed Braxton Berrios, drafted Jaden Higgins. The big lie from Caserio is we always have to draft best player available, best player available. Well, how can you say that you're drafting best player available when every year and nearly every pick you take, you trade up or down to get a guy, never staying in that same spot because you target specific players, Nick? That's what you do. So, Caserio, you're telling me you trade up and down having no idea why? You don't know who you're going to pick. You're just going to trade up to 5 spots and you're going to pick whoever? No, you've got a guy that you want. So go get the guy that you want and make it a guy that you need, because you know what you need. I mean, everybody knows what they need. I mean, national people, that's all they talk about, the Texans offensive line. So it was dumb. He should have drafted a guard instead of Jalen Noel. And Jalen Noel could turn out to be something great. But what they needed this last year was tons of offensive line help. You had Titus. You drafted Ursary, so that was taken care of. So go get you some guards, because Ed Ingram was a journeyman. Tomlinson was a journeyman. I mean, we knew that going into the draft. You knew what you had. These guys were available for a reason. So you should have been drafting guards, and he didn't do it. And it's ridiculous. And, come on, Juice Scruggs and Jared Patterson. Obviously, you guys had no like faith in those guys, or you wouldn't have gone and got out other guys. So that's my problem with what Caserio did and addressing the offensive line. It really bothered me, especially when he's like best player available. That's BS.
Josh, you want to go
Yeah, I was just trying to look to kind of see which guards were still available. Because the problem is, and I think I remember offline, me and you, because we went through the same process. All right. I understand the idea of like, okay, we got a receiver already. We didn't really need, quote unquote, need a receiver right at that point. But the problem is, like in the third round, when you get to that level, you're not gonna. Noel was so far and ahead everyone else on the board for the most part. Like it seemed like it looked at him and was like, I can't not pick this guy, right? He's gonna at minimum be a dynamic kick returner, which he absolutely was for us. And at the maximum, he flashed and could be an explosive downfield player if your quarterback was playing to a high level. I think our conversation about Noel completely shifts if two things happen. One, if CJ Stroud plays like a quarterback that is playoff worthy and was worthy of going to the championship game. And two, if the offensive coordinator doesn't have these moments of brilliance with him in the Niners game, and there was one other game, I think it was the Seahawks maybe, or no, it was the Chargers game too, where he has these moments where like, oh, this guy can really be helpful downfield, and then just completely forget about it. It was one of my biggest criticisms. I think this is more of a coaching thing, and this ties back in to your concern. I get what you're saying. Like I personally, I would have loved taking a guard in the third round if it makes sense there, right? Theoretically, absolutely. I want to draft minimum two offensive linemen in the top 4 rounds every year. I come from that, like, I've always bought into that Parcells kind of approach where you have to keep building with the big guys early and you can kind of figure everything else around. But I think in this situation, like, for me, the person that I put the blame on for the offensive line last year and not kind of reaching that moment quick enough was the coaching more. Like I put this on the offensive line coach, and I put this on the offensive coordinator, and I put this on D'Amico for not getting to the unit that personally I came into the year. Leo remembers this. This is kind of, it was for me, it was like,
I mean,
was hoping,
you were crazy for saying that at the beginning. Remember that Ed Ingram, yeah.
Right. I love the Ed Ingram because of the run game and all the things that he brought. But for me, the things that finally made everything kind of come together, you're moving Titus down the left guard, right? So you got the size at guard, takes away his like issues he has with athleticism and movement, and you got those big two dudes. Now, for me, before the year, it was Cam Robinson and Ursery at the 2 tackles because that's where I thought they were kind of go, and I thought that's how we were going to kind of have that vision and kind of create that physicality. I didn't think it was going to be Trent Brown, but for them to not get to that look and that dynamic and not see, okay, we need to get as big as possible, as quick as possible. Like I think that's where the blame is for me more than anything because the pieces were there. It's one thing if we got to the end of the year and there still wasn't a mix match and a combo that worked for us, but there was a combo sitting there.
Was Trent healthy though? Was he healthy early? Because that's the problem with Trent. That's the whole history of Trent Brown is he's never healthy. I don't think he was healthy earlier in the season. And then he gets healthy. And then, at the end of the season in the biggest game, guess what? There's no Trent Brown there. And that's the issue with Trent Brown. Now, should Cam Robinson have been the left tackle? They wanted to go ahead and make Ursery the left tackle. Now, could have Cam played right tackle? I don't know. I wasn't a fan of just trading him because you're thinking, oh, well, hey, he's not going to do anything. You never know when you're going to need a tackle in that case. But to me, if that's what you thought about Titus at guard, you liked him that much with Trent Brown, then, Cam Robinson at right tackle might not have been a bad idea. I just don't know as far as Trent Brown is concerned, was he healthy or was he ready earlier in the year? And the other part of this is my problem with the Texans over the last few years is why are we keep moving Titus around? He's so good at tackle. You might disagree with me, but I watch the guy at tackle, and every year he does a fantastic job of keeping our quarterback on his feet. And to me, that's the big thing. And the problem with the run game isn't Titus Howard. It's been our interior that's not pushing guys around. And last year, and the last few years, left tackle Laramie Tunsil doesn't give a crap about blocking for a run. He's terrible at it. He has no interest in getting dirty. He has no interest in pushing guys around. You saw the difference at times with Ursary where he would push guys around. So, my thing was like, can we leave Titus in one position for a whole year somewhere? And it still doesn't happen. He's always moving around. They're always doing stuff with him. And, if you have a problem with Titus Howard and all the moving around that he's doing and what he's doing when he moves around, it's not fair. It's not fair to him. Like, give the guy a chance to get good at one position. He's played tackle. He's played guard. He's played left guard, right guard. It changes every single game, every single year.
So here's how I look at it. I think part of Titus is, honestly, I kind of disagree with you about him, right? Honestly, I think although he's good at right tackle, I think there's instances in this last game where I think he's a better pass blocker than he is run blocker at tackle specifically. And there's instances in the last game where I saw him get the line of scrimmage get reset on him, like in the backfield a few times where like Woody Marks was literally chopping his feet. But I think at guard, I've talked about this on the channel a few times. I think at guard with him duo blocking with whoever is at center, it was hell. I think who was with even Jake Andrews at center at points in this year. There was times where he got pushed. I kind of think personally, like if they leave him at tackle, fine. You have to improve the interior anyway. I think we have to add 2 new starters probably on the line anyway. You know what I mean? Regardless of how you feel, where they go. Like if you view Titus as a guard, you need a tackle. If you view Titus as a tackle, you need a guard. It's kind of interchangeable like that. I think part of the reason, and me and Josh have always talked about this too with him, part of the reason why I think you sign a player like that, or why they signed him, is because of his versatility to begin with. You can agree or disagree with it, but that's obviously what they do, because every time someone goes down or the line looks too bad at some points, they move them. And it's frustrating to watch, now that I think though, what I'll say about this, like I agree with Josh on this. Honestly, I feel like the main problem with this offensive line, really the past couple years, now I understand his sophomore year, there was like probably more free runners at him than anyone else in the NFL. But this line and the way that we've built this roster is built for a quarterback that really doesn't have to rely on a run game to keep us ahead of the chains and keep us moving positively, moving the ball forward and staying, on schedule. I think that I think CJ has been that bad this year, especially that like, it even makes it hard to run the football at times, because teams already know that if you stop the run, you get nothing. I mean, it's just bad to me. So
well, I want to give CJ some credit to what happened this year, and Nick Caserio some credit. CJ was getting the ball out of his hand quicker this year consistently. It all fell apart. Everything screwed up in the playoffs. You almost have to take that and put it aside. But he was getting the ball out much quicker this year. And I'm also going to throw this in there. The scheming, the offensive line communication, all of that stuff looked way better up front. It didn't feel like he was, having to rush stuff. CJ also was climbing the pocket better. He wasn't fading back into sacks that he shouldn't have been taking to begin with. They only gave up 20 something sacks, 23, 24 sacks this year. That was it during the regular season. It wasn't a disaster. In the playoffs, it looked awful, but that, I still think there's an element of that's on CJ. He's still got to get better when they send the blitz. And as far as Titus goes in the run game, my feeling is, I don't know what you think about this, Leo. Mm-hmm. Titus is a better run blocker in a zone scheme. And it always feels like we've got offensive coordinators that have an offensive line in a zone scheme that don't want to run the zone scheme on in the run game. And we got a running back right now that I think is better in the zone scheme. So I just don't understand the idea of this. We're going to just knock guys off their feet with this offense. This is not an offensive line. This is not the talent of type of guys that knock guys off their feet. I remember when they had Gibbs as the offensive line coach, and that's when the Texans really took off for the first time back. I think it was 2010. The offense started really looking good behind Kyle Shanahan, FYI. And that was, you had a great offensive line coach that knew how to do zone scheme. They weren't super talented. That was not a super talented group. Dwayne Brown was really good, but it was a lot of guys that you never heard of much before and after that. And it was done in a way because of the zone scheme and just scheming up and showing how to move guys without having to knock them over.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, this whole conversation to me, because there's two paths that have to kind of go forward, right? You have a guy like Titus who, in order for him to be at his best, you have to put him in a similar situation because they've committed to the zone. I mean, not the zone, the man gap scheme. Like, that's kind of what they've shown. When they drafted a guy like Ursary, he's going to function better going forward because he's a guy that can kind of moving side to side. He's long, he's lanky, he's athletic, but he's better straightforward, kind of going and attacking. And they've decided depending on what they do with Ingram will be interesting. But I think with a guy like Howard, the one way that you can kind of utilize him and keep him a tackle is you have to pour the assets in at center and left guard. You have to go full on Kansas City Chiefs after they lost that Super Bowl where they reinvented their offensive line. They went and got Creed Humphrey. They got Trey Smith and they got Joe Thuney, and they became inside-out offensive line, and they brought in two tackles who were like above average tackles, which is what I think Titus is, right? Really, like at this point, like I think he's a solid player. That if you have great players inside, that's how you have to attack. The problem is, right now, the quarterback, we don't have Mahomes back there, and there's a guy back there right now that needs the offensive line to be run-based 100% at this point, because he's not at a point where he's processing against high-level defenses and in a way that you can sustainably expect him to win in the playoffs, right? You have a guy right now that you have to lean farther and farther into the run game, and that means every other player on the offensive line damn near has to be a plus run blocker. Hold
on. This idea that you got to get a bunch of Pro Bowlers and All Pros. That's
that's not what I'm saying.
I was just debunking that. Yeah, you have to. They need some more resources in that. But let me just throw this out there because I was going to bring this up for you guys.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about this on my show as well.
Yeah.
It's almost like what CJ was missing this year was a guy that could put 7 100-yard rushing games out there during the season. And guess what? They had a guy. They had that guy. And I think Texans fans and the rest of the NFL just don't understand how darn good Joe Mixon was last year. He had 7 100-yard rushing games behind an offensive line that was god-awful. He only played 14 games last year. He didn't finish some of those, and he still had 7 100-yard rushing games. To give you guys an idea of how impressive that is, this year, if he had 7 100-yard rushing games, he would have the third most 100-yard rushing games in the NFL. We don't see guys getting 100-yard rushing games all the time. Like, we are underestimating the entire fan base. The entire league underestimates the loss of Joe Mixon. The Texans would be in the Super Bowl on Sunday if Joe Mixon was healthy. I am 100% convinced at that. It was also Nick Caserio, who was totally incompetent at the beginning of the year, not knowing who should be the running back behind there. It was too much Nick Chubb and Ogunbowale, and Woody Marks had shown something, in camp. They drafted him in the 3rd round for a reason. The guy was talented. The guy can put up 100-yard rushing games. The problem with Woody Marks every game is, he gets on the bench for about a couple of series because he gets hurt. He goes in the blue tent. It was a joke around the fantasy football community that, every week he would be in the blue tent and he would miss a couple. So you couldn't start him in your fantasy football leagues because of that, because he wasn't getting the number of attempts that you wanted him to get. Jawad Jordan, man, that guy looked good. Too bad, they were so set on Ogunbowale and other guys, because that guy would have helped you out a lot too. But like this whole idea that like, hey, Joe Mixon's not there, that you can just go ahead and find a guy off the street that's Joe Mixon, or that Woody Marks should be Joe Mixon in his rookie year. Yeah. Like that's what the fan base thinks. It's like, dude, Yordan Alvarez, hey, you know what? Having him healthy 3 weeks last year for the Astros, it's a little bit of a difference, because Yordan Alvarez, if you guys don't understand on X and on social media, Yordan Alvarez is Aaron Judge. He's Ohtani. I mean, we're talking about one of the 3 best hitters in all of baseball. RBI guy, whatever. They missed the playoffs by 1 game. They missed the Super Bowl, I believe, by pretty much 1 game. Because if they beat the Patriots, they're taking out the Broncos, and the Texans are in the Super Bowl. And Joe Mixon, maybe it's a game that you win back early in the season that makes that a home game instead of going to New England on the road. I mean, there's those 3 early games. If Joe Mixon's healthy in those 3 early games that you lost by 1 score, thanks CJ Gardner-Johnson, by the way, 3 games by 1 score early in the season, that it could be the difference of you not having to play the Patriots in the snow and the ice. And CJ Stroud is terrible in bad conditions. And, I said it on my show, on my post-game show, like we can get into more CJ Stroud, but I said it, I'm like, that guy, what he should do this offseason, I'm not worried about him getting haircuts. I want him to go out in the snow, go find some cold weather. If you got to go to Antarctica, go there. You need to practice in cold weather, because you're terrible in cold weather. And guess what? That's when you win Super Bowls. On your way to the Super Bowl, you're going to have to go through some cold weather, unless you put together a 14 or a 13-win season and be the number 1 seed. So, I mean, that's the problem right there is, they missed Joe Mixon, and the Texans had the team. They had the team. It was the one guy, and injuries matter every year, and they just couldn't overcome that one thing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, but I think that kind of like is what like is why we're saying that this whole thing needs to be so run game focused. Because like the truth is that unfortunately, like I mean, it sucks to say that. I mean, hell, Joe Mixon almost like, how old is he? Like 31 almost anyway. I mean, the fact is that like if your run game is contingent on that one player anyway, it's not good enough, to begin with. So to me, like I feel like we have to add these players like we're talking about on the O-line, and I think we have to also invest in the running back spot again, because I mean, hell, at this point, it just doesn't seem like Joe Mixon might not even play for us or
no, I wouldn't count on it. I would, you got to go get somebody, and there's a ton of good running backs out on the market this year in free agency, and that's probably where you could spend, because running backs are cheap, and they maybe made a mistake a couple of years ago by making the Mixon deal. They could have just gone and gotten Derrick Henry. Where would they be if they had Derrick Henry this year? Because that guy,
they should have gave a few more bucks for Saquon. I mean, that's exactly what's been reported, that they priced themselves out. They said, we're not going to give a few more million for Saquon Barkley, and that seems like the move that
Well, Saquon didn't have the best year. Derrick Henry's looked great both years that he's played in the last 2. We thought he was out of gas. He's a big guy. Yeah. A lot of that was the theory. But you talk to people that were NFL fans, I was like, I don't know if Derrick Henry's got much left in the tank. He's older, a lot of mileage, whatever. But Henry is the guy that's still doing it. And Joe Mixon, I don't know what happened to him, but something happened, and he's been out all year. And Saquon did not have a good year. And if you had Derrick Henry, 100%, this team's playing in the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that really hurts to say to hear. But I mean, especially because, I was talking a lot about drafting running back high last year. People thought I was crazy as hell. And then, now we're here. But anyway, I mean, so
third round is high. This iteration of the NFL, like in the old days, you had to draft them 1 and 2. But I mean, teams get 3rd round, 4th round guys. And I'm going to throw the list at you, because I actually was going to read it off on my show. But here's the list of running backs: Breece Hall, Rico Dowdle, Travis Etienne, J.K. Dobbins, Javonte Williams, Kenneth Walker. They're out there, and there's enough out there where you would think, the price is not going to be super high for all these guys, and running backs, it's just not high, and you're getting rid of the Joe Mixon money. And I'm not exactly sure about their cap situation, but the cap goes up every year now. So throw out the numbers that you see right now, because I don't even know if they've announced the new cap yet. So just, that's what I would do in free agency. That's where you can address stuff in free agency. Offensive line, it's bad money to invest in because those guys don't become available and they're overpriced. But running back, there's where you can do something.
Yeah, I agree. I see where you're coming from for sure, man. All right,
Yeah.
we're gonna go ahead and finish this off with this. This is, or shit. I kind of feel terrible putting this up, man. But all right, so I guess, do you think that I won't even frame it like that. Do you think that do you think that it's realistic that this defense can repeat this performance and also build a situational offense that is, good enough for us to win a Super Bowl? I'll frame it like that. What do you think about that, Robert?
CJ Stroud, if he just handed it off the whole game against the Patriots, they're probably in this. Yeah, CJ Stroud can win a Super Bowl when you have D'Amico and this talent on defense. And most of these guys are coming back. I agree with Josh. The likelihood is they're not going to stay healthy next year. I don't know what you can do about that, but you hopefully are healthy enough going into the playoffs. That's all that you can hope for, going into the playoffs, that the key guys are going to stay healthy. And to me, there's only 4 guys that matter. It's Stingley, Lassiter, Daniil, and Will. If those 4 guys, if they're going healthy into the playoffs next year, you can piece stuff together around them with D'Amico on defense and, Matt Burke's back. And, I got to mention his name because he took over this year, play calling, and I thought he did a tremendous job. But absolutely, you can win a look. If Sam Darnold, like, this guy is the ultimate journeyman, everybody's given up on him. Sam Darnold's in the Super Bowl. Why is he in the Super Bowl? Great defense, great wide receiver, JSN. We got Nico. They put people around him. There was good coaching, all of that stuff. Why not? CJ can absolutely be a Super Bowl quarterback. But the thing that I want from CJ Stroud, the thing that he needs to be working on in the offseason, it's not the physical stuff. It's all neck up. You have to redo your thinking. You cannot think, I've got to make every play, every single down. You got to get out of that mentality. And he said he talked to Tom Brady. He talked to him early in his career. Like, you talked to him, but did you watch Tom Brady? When it wasn't there, he would just fire it into the ground. He didn't care. Live to fight another day. And CJ Stroud's got to get over this mentality of, I've got to make a 30-yard play every single down. Get over it. This is the NFL. You can't do it like that.
Yeah. What you think, Josh? What do you think about the?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I love the idea of attacking free agency with running back. That's the one spot that you can, in this class, where you could go hog wild. I would go top of them if they value and evaluate. And the one thing that I'll never question Nick Caserio on is his ability to evaluate pro personnel across the board. Like, if he evaluates a running back and says that's the guy, because his ability to go, how good Mixon played when he was healthy was really high level with how bad the offensive line was around him and his ability to produce without it. If he can go evaluate and says, this is a running back that I love the fit of, and I think he can really be a home run hitter, whether it's Walker, whoever it is, because there's some younger guys that they can kind of work around and who can kind of have that flexibility. I think it's important. Guys that not only can run the zone, because Woody Marks can run zone, that have that experience in a power scheme. I think Kenneth Walker would be a really great fit with his home run ability and his ability to break tackles. And he has that experience in that dual running back situation with him and Charbonnet this year. But the more and more I look at this, and I think the most important thing is you can't rest on your laurels on defense. I agree with what you said earlier. You can't draft. You're not going to be in position to draft this game-changing edge. But I think in the second round in this class, the way it's kind of bunched up or in that second day 2 range, you can get that guy with incredible tools that can be a contributor right away, that can be that third guy, kind of the way the Giants had with when they drafted Matthias Kiwanuka or Osi Umenyiora or Justin Tuck and behind Strahan, and then when they brought JPP in and kind of moved those guys around, you can get that toolsy guy that you can then trust your coaching, because you've seen how good your coaching is at developing Will Anderson. If you can get that guy with those tools that can come in, slowly develop, get better and better, I think it's so important to continue to add to that defensive line and keep feeding that strength and creating absolute just horrendous time for offenses. You can do that, it's going to lead over and help the offense. I think we're going to find a way, like whether it's running back and adding to the offensive line. I believe after what Nick was able to do with the real bare bones approach, the way he was able to find pieces that work together, I 100% agree. When you referenced back with the early Texans, where in the 2011, I believe it was, and kind of they never really had these superstar players on there, but they just worked together. I think there's the ability that and the superpower that Nick has with pro personnel in his evaluation of those guys. He can find pieces that fit, whether it's the Cade Mays out of Carolina that you mentioned or whoever you can bring in. I think there's ways to move that around and get those guys that can work together, along as you continuously add the way it is last 2 years of drafting second round tackles. You can keep adding two offensive linemen in the first 4 rounds. Has to be mandatory. So you do that, you add to the defensive line, you keep building up the middle, linebacker, safety, you just keep adding and adding and adding. And you're right, he does target guys, and you're absolutely right, he trades up for guys, but he's also made 9 picks the last 2 years. So like he's still getting volume and he's targeting his guys. So he's kind of gotten best of both worlds. I'm still extremely positive on the team, and I think there's ways to do it as long as they're extremely honest about who CJ Stroud is and how they have to kind of build around him.
Yeah, I think that, if you build the run game up, like if we get to the point where we can, be like, hell, even a top half of the league team, which I feel like is a low bar. I think that we need to be aiming to be like a top 10 rushing team next year. I think that if you did that, I think that there should be so little on CJ's like plate to where like he should be able to be efficient, against the tough teams. To me, I feel like there's been a lot of talk about him specifically like in games where, we blew teams out. He looks like his old self, but that Chargers game, outside of the first 2 possessions, it was pretty bad. The Chiefs game, I can't remember the last time an offense had -2 yards in the quarter. Like, let me know if I'm tripping, but I can't. That was another horrendous game. There was plenty of games where I just feel like if we was able to run the football, maybe there would be so little like pressure on him to do anything difficult, which is crazy to say. I know that might sound harsh, to some people, but I just think that I'm looking at it like adding offensive linemen, adding to the run game is only going to create more and more layup throws for him. And at some point, like maybe he gets his confidence back, and then once he gets his confidence back, and we're putting him in these really high efficiency type situations, he can have an MVP year off of that. Hell, I remember Justin Herbert the first year with Harbaugh, right? Man, his numbers were not that crazy, but he was in MVP talks. I think a situation like that, we can definitely get him to be good. But I think in terms of investing in the offense, it cannot be receiver based, because I don't think that he can take advantage of a team with good receivers if there is no run game. And then similarly to that, I think that the defense has to be good, because when you, as we all know, when you run the ball, sometimes you will have some quarters where it looks ugly, but that's when the defense has to really stand up and just, create opportunities for you to continue rushing the ball by creating stops. So that's kind of where I'm at. I think that we can still win with this team. I think we can. Robert, man, we're going to go.
Let me remind, because while you were talking, I'm thinking this. What if I told you before the year, you're going to New England in the second round, you're going to play in the snow, and everybody's going to get mad at CJ after the game, But CJ is going to go into the game with no Joe Mixon, no Nico Collins, lose Dalton Schultz in the first quarter, and his right tackle is going to walk out before the game and go, I can't go. And, it's like we're all mad at CJ Stroud. Like, you're not building the perfect team. He's got to play better. There's no question about it. But at the same time, like, let's remember, this guy went into New England with nothing in his holster. Some rookie wide receivers, and Xavier Hutchinson is basically who he was relying on mostly. So, that's the issue, is like, yeah, they need to, some stuff needs to fall right. You got to have luck to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah. I mean, Robert, I don't think you know how much. Some people call me a CJ hater, man. I'll just leave it at that. I don't think I'm a hater. I just don't see the same thing that a lot of people see. Now that said, though, I agree with you. Though I 100% agree with you, because
what Drake May was awesome in this Super Bowl run. He was racking up 300-yard game. No, but all he had to do was take care of the ball, because he got lucky. He faced CJ Stroud, who was a turnover machine. He faced Justin Herbert, that, and give New England's defense credit, but Justin Herbert, and then he faced a backup quarterback, a bad backup quarterback on a terrible day.
But I mean, here's the thing, though. I mean, at the end of the day, was Drake May not the better quarterback in each of those games that he played? That's been my stance. Like, people,
it wasn't hard to be better, though. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but that's the playoffs. I mean, he can't control that Jarrett Stidham goes out and tries to, like, chest pass the football like he's throwing like he's throwing to his small forward or something across the court. He can't control that. I mean, that's the playoffs. Like, I mean, Josh Allen turned the ball over 4 times in the game. I mean, Bo Nix couldn't control that.
You don't, though, often get a backup quarterback who got injured the week before on, like, the last series, against the best team in the NFL that year, who has home field advantage. You don't often get that. I mean, what I'm saying is, it was rare what happened with Drake May, but sometimes you got to be lucky, because you know what? CJ Stroud, he's not Pat Mahomes. He's not Josh Allen. So at that point, you got to be lucky. And he's not Lamar Jackson. So you got to be lucky. And I don't think he's ever going to be one of those 3 guys. So for the Texans to get to the Super Bowl, either you get one of those guys, or you're going to have to catch some breaks. And the Texans had the best defense in the NFL, which helps you catch some breaks. It just happened to be that CJ, didn't do the dumb, stupid thing, is just make the simple play and not screw stuff up.
We can never put him in a spot where he has to throw the ball 40 plus times in a playoff type game again. I think, like, to do that again would be roster mismanagement. Just coach.
Well, Nick Caserio shouldn't have had. He shouldn't have had him throwing 40. That was another problem too.
He threw the ball like 47 times. And I think, like, I mean, that's how I view it. Now I could word it differently. I feel like you kind of agree with me in some ways. I'm saying things differently than you. I'm not saying that you agree with me on CJ, but you do agree that we need to commit to running the football. You do agree that we need to invest in the run game.
CJ's not going to carry. He's not dragging you by. Yeah. He can't do it.
He's not that guy.
You treat him like Russell Wilson, and you basically say, like, the thing that's going to keep him from a Super Bowl or not, if this defense keeps playing like this, is whether or not he's willing to play like a quarterback that can't make the big mistake. And right now, he hasn't shown that he can't play like. He just can't play like that right now. He hasn't shown the discipline. He hasn't shown the mentality of win over everything. There's too much of, I'm trying to be the difference maker, because he's been the difference maker his whole life. He's got to decide that, like, and he said it in the last press conference, which is crazy that it's just now, like, he's just now saying it, but he said in the last press conference about him being game manager, and that's something new for him. Like, dude, since you've been here, it's been a defensive first game, and it's time for him to kind of learn that. And I hopefully, like, my biggest concern is that there's a shift in, like, how they're communicating with him to reiterate that. You saw some of it. I 100% agree with what you said, Robert, about Caley earlier in the year, where he did a great job of kind of putting like the blinders on and say, all right, here's the quick stuff. It's really simple. You have to take this. You have to kind of do this. You have to very simple and do this. And it may not be great, but we know how good our defense is. And there was good moments with Caley doing that. The problem is when you play better defenses, it's not functional to do that unless your defense plays at this crazy level. And especially if your quarterback's not willing. So I think it's going to be really interesting, like with the same people in his ear, because they haven't shifted up that structure at all between OC and quarter. We almost got that. It almost happened with Gerard Johnson maybe getting an OC job somewhere, but that didn't happen. How is that shift going to happen? And is there going to be enough of a push where he doesn't think a haircut's going to be enough to change it?
Something's got to change up here, and it's not. You're saying it's not the hair. The hair is not what's got to change up, and that's the point. That's my whole point of this offseason is CJ Stroud gonna finally learn after 3 years of being rockhead, like, hey guy, you can't do this by yourself. You're not gonna do it by yourself. You've got to live to fight another. It's the live to fight another day thing, and you've just got to sometimes do that. And he does that at times in the regular season. He doesn't have a lot of turnovers. He had 0 fumbles, 0 that he lost in this regular season. So where was that in the playoffs? Why was there a panic in the playoffs? That's where the mindset's got to change. That's where it's got to. And look, he's not good on the road. That's got to change too. This guy in adversity has got to be better on the road and in the playoffs, and he's bad at both. Look at the numbers.
Yeah.
All right, y'all, man. So, man, first of all, Robert, thank you for coming on, man. You want to plug your show and tell everybody what you got going on and coming up?
Absolutely. Now I am in my 13th year as a podcast. It's the longest running regular Houston sports podcast. We cover everything: Rockets, Astros, Texans. I want to say I'm running up to about 1,600, 1,700 shows over the years, 300, 400, over 350 guests, a lot of former players, current players we've had over the years, just a fantastic array of guests over that time. And just, check it out, Houston Sports Talk. It's on YouTube. I'm with the Believe Network, so it's also available through audio. So, if you're going to the gym, you're at the grocery store, you don't have to be in front of your computer. You don't have to do that. You can listen to us anywhere, and just check us out. 500,000 views on the YouTube channel over the last year. So we're growing fast, and really appreciate you guys having me on. HST podcast, by the way, HST podcast on X, if you want to follow me there, or you can message me. I leave my DMs open on X, so it's at HST podcast. If you got any questions, or if you want to come on, you think your stuff, and you want to come on this show, and you've got some background, I'm always looking for guests. So hit me up.
All right, man. Make sure y'all sub to him, man, and follow him on Twitter, man. Follow us all on Twitter, man. We got more stuff coming from y'all for y'all soon. All right, y'all. Have a good one. Peace, y'all.